it's gonna be alright.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Trans Stupid, where I take a look at the wonderful world of LGBTQIA++ news, because stupidity is intersectional. So this week we're having quite a big general election here in the UK, and it seems to be whatever party you want to go for, there's quite a significant flaw with it, whether it's the Conservatives with Boris Johnson running away from scrutiny at every chance he gets, or Labour with their severe problem with anti-Semitism, regardless of how much they want to explain it away. It is there, and it's really driving me crazy. You can't really vote for any perfect party. And that now also includes the Lib Dems. They've seemed to have gone on quite an anti-Brexit tangent over the last couple of months with their whole idea of completely revoking Article 50, which has turned off a lot of prospective voters. Even some Remain voters think that's a little bit anti-democratic. But Jo Swinson has some very strange thoughts when it comes to the idea of biology. In an interview with BBC Radio 5 Live, where after the Lib Dems announced that they were looking at reforming trans rights in the UK, Jo Swinson said that she doesn't actually believe in biological sex. In this article on the BBC, it says the Lib Dems want to change the law to automatically recognise non-binary gender identities and allow people to self-identify without medical evidence. Apparently, this would stop the marginalisation of already vulnerable people. But then, asked whether she believed all people were born either male or female, she replied, "Not from what I have read. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on the subject, but I don't think things are as binary as they are often presented." Now, whilst Miss Swinson accepted most people's biological sex was determined at birth, she said this was not always the case. And she added, this was not purely about science, but was a debate about people and their lives, and a debate about people who are facing extreme prejudice. The Lib Dems have said the next government needs to be much more proactive in tackling discrimination and hate crimes, the rise in which they claim has left many people no longer feeling safe. So the Lib Dems want to basically put in the kind of changes that trans rights activists are wanting with the Gender Recognition Act, and this idea that, well, you don't need a diagnosis of gender dysphoria or really to take any kind of steps in a transition in order to be legally recognised as the gender you say that you are. I've talked about this a lot in the past, so I don't want to bang on about it too much here. Suffice to say, it's a bad idea. People like me really require the actual medical care to make sure that we are doing the right thing when we are transitioning. And it worries me that we've got yet another major political party in the UK that just seems to follow along with the angry activists and not listen to many other trans people who think this is stupid. We're not alone in this. We can see that this is damaging. It's damaging to women's spaces if you're just going to let anyone in who says, I'm a women's. I find it patronising because I've had to take many steps to transition, and that's for me and also for society. When you remove the medical aspects of this, you're simply not putting any kind of onus on anyone to change anything about them. And I know that's what the trans lobby really likes to push, but it's simply not fair. It's not fair on the people who have had to make changes and need to make the changes like me. And it's not fair on the rest of society when you're expecting them to refer to you as one way when you're doing absolutely nothing to look the part. And we also have Swinson saying that trans people face extreme prejudice. I really wish that this narrative would die. It's bullshit. We don't face extreme prejudice in this country. A few weeks ago, it was Trans Day of Remembrance in the UK, and there were buildings in London that were flying the trans pride flag. Hell, they were flying it for Trans Awareness Week as well. You have a whole of London closing down just for the LGBTQIA++ community. You have people getting fired for disagreeing with trans ideology. We do not face extreme prejudice. Like, there are going to be people out there who are genuinely transphobic. I'm not saying that transphobia simply doesn't exist. It does. But to paint it as an epidemic, this is irresponsible. This is not the reality of the vast majority of trans people. It's simply painting us as victims. When you're talking about the amount of hate crimes that are being reported, what are the criteria for these hate crimes? Are these people being assaulted? Are these just people who have had maybe abuse in the street? Or are they people who have just disagreed with one another online? There's a lot to take in when you're talking about hate crime statistics. But of course, the real highlight of the Swinson interview was the fact that she doesn't believe in biological sex, or that whilst the vast majority of people are biologically male or female, or that could be right at birth, there is that one group of people who might not be. That's not really how any of this works. Like, is she trying to refer to intersex people? Because they're still biologically male or biologically female. There's just differences when they are born. They don't stop being men or women because they are intersex. Just like they're not going to be a magical gender, they're not a magical sex all to their own. That's not how it works. I know that, and I'm not even an expert when it comes to intersex ideas. But again, there's this bizarre idea that because there is trans people, that means that, well, they're not always right when they're looking at the sex. No, the sex is perfectly correct. When I was born, I was biologically male, and that was recognised. And I cannot change that biology. But what I can change is the way that society sees me and the way that I see myself. That's the point of transitioning. I really wish that these woke politicians understood this. It's a clear distinction as to what makes us trans in the first place. We are not looking at ignoring biology, far from it. We have to deal with that biological reality on a daily basis. What we're looking at is just being able to be treated as the way that we see ourselves, the way that we can get through our days feeling comfortable with the body that we have as much as possible. And right now, the best way of doing that is by transitioning. You don't need any of these new changes to the Gender Recognition Act to do that, and you don't need to ignore biological fact to do that either. Just treat us as normal people, but acknowledge that there is something different about us. It's not the norm, but that's fine. It's okay to be different. I mean, hell, the whole queer movement is about celebrating difference and how it's great to be different. So just let it be different. Like, it's not hard. And what really frustrates me with this is it seems this is the way all the political parties are going. Labour, for example, are quite well known within the gender critical circles to not be that friendly to their ideas, even though a lot of the gender critical people are committed socialists. But the now Socialist Party in the UK has decided that actually the TERFs are fascists, or at least when you listen to the trans activists who are controlling that narrative are involved. And as for the Conservatives, well, in all honesty, the Conservatives like to try and look as nice as they can be. And so if they think that this is what is going to make them look nice in the eyes of people who are never going to vote for them anyway, I can see them doing that. I don't see the Conservatives sticking with biological reality. I just see them following the trends. That's what they generally always do. So this is a sad time when you're looking at trans rights in British politics, because you've either got to go the full SJW trans activist route, or you just get ignored. And it seems that that is exactly what Jo Swinson is doing. Maybe in the future, the Lib Dems could move to a position of sanity. I mean, I'm always going to try and hold out. I mean, up until very recently, I've always voted Lib Dem. They've been probably the party I've supported the most. And they can still win my support so long as they get their act together on Brexit and get their act together on, well, trans issues. But, you know, only time will tell if that is going to happen. So the next story that I want to talk about involves Marvel. Now, I'm quite a big fan of, well, the Marvel movies. A lot of people who have watched me know that I enjoy my Disney. And annoyingly, Disney Plus isn't out over here just yet. However, apparently in one of their latest series, they announce a transgender superhero. As the story reports, while there have been Marvel characters in the past who appear to be trans or somewhere on the LGBT spectrum, the company have now announced their first official transgender superhero. The Mighty Rebecca is inspired by a 12-year-old transgender girl of the same name and forms part of Marvel's Hero Project series on Disney+. As part of the show, the Mighty Rebecca has her own comic book too, the first issue of which is available to read on Marvel's website for free. and I've checked out the particular comic. So The Mighty Rebecca Volume 1 involves a brick being hurled through a window saying, "You don't belong here," and then the Mighty Rebecca's magical powers are revealed, for she has the power of extreme wokeness, and that's literally it. The article continues, Rebecca and her family have been active in trans and general LGBT rights in New Jersey, including the Garden State Equality Organization, which aims to tackle misinformation about transgender people in society. Rebecca's also appeared before New Jersey lawmakers to push for Assembly Bill 1335, which mandates that schools include LGBT history as part of their curriculum. The bill recently passed, and LGBT teaching will be introduced in the state in 2020. In a video interview with Rebecca, she and her mother talk about their advocacy and success in widening understanding of transgender children in the school system. The clip also shows Rebecca speaking at an event for Garden State Equality, with her mother noting her bravery as speaking in public on behalf of trans rights. Okay, she's 12 years old. Why are all of these young trans people suddenly activists? Why are they being pushed like this into the public eye? There's something wrong with this. Why can't you just be a kid? Why does there have to be a political angle onto all of this? It seems like Jazz Jennings apparently opened a can of worms with this kind of thing. I didn't mind Jazz being someone who was young and transitioning at the time, because I thought, well, there is a bit interest there, but now it just seems to be everyone doing it, and I can't help but feel whether there's another agenda here. What kind of parent is getting their kids involved at politics? That shouldn't be happening. The kids should be a kid. And if they want to become an advocate, wait until they're about 16, 18, when they know a little bit more about the world. But it seems to be forced on us. And I've talked about trans kids in the past, and I do think that 12 years old is a bit too young to be transitioning, but I don't want to go into that topic again. But another thing is that this being Marvel's first trans superhero, I just kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit as well. So it's obvious that this superhero isn't really a hero at all. Wokeness isn't a magic power, but they could have some fun with this idea. And I don't mean this as being a virtue signal, someone who's just going to be pushing for trans rights and trans acceptability, but you could have a lot of fun with this story. Just imagine this. So you had a, let's say, 18-year-old trans girl who has been going through puberty, going through a very difficult time with the changes in her body. She finally comes out as being trans, and she starts the process of transitioning, and she finally gets used to her body. She's finally happy with it. And then something happens and she gets powers. You know, this is the Marvel universe we're talking about. Maybe she's bitten by some sort of radioactive animal and she gains their powers. You know, you have Ant-Man, the Wasp, Spider-Man, and not all of them are bitten by animals, but you see my point. So, you know, maybe she becomes Seal Girl. Maybe she's bitten by a baby seal and has the power of seals. So you have someone who's already dealt with their body with a lot of change, finally gets used to it, only to then have another change and deal with that as well. That seems like a great story, and you don't even have to have any wokeness in it. You can just run with that. Like, don't try and steal that idea, please. It's my idea. I'm going to make sure this video stays out, because I quite like that idea. It's something I've always thought of. But the last story that I want to touch on involves quite a strange story from Pink News. And I say strange because they really didn't include any information in it at all. But it pushes quite a popular narrative that I've heard a lot of people complaining about, so I wanted to talk about it here as well. According to Pink News, trans woman reveals she was detained at the airport for being transgender in emotional viral video. The trans woman, who is called Layla, posted a video of herself on Twitter where she can be seen walking through an airport in tears. It's so fucked up that trans people have to literally go through that, she says in the video. I know it's so fucking dramatic to cry over a fucking airport, but it's so annoying. Literally, trans people have to go through this and get detained. I just can't. In a tweet with a video she added, last week I literally got detained at the airport for being transgender while trying to go home to visit my family for Thanksgiving. I'm sharing this so anyone who has or will experience this is not alone. The video has since gone viral and has been viewed more than 600,000 times, and the tweet has been liked more than 30,000 times. She's been met with love and support online since posting the video, but sadly she has also met some detractors who have accused her of exaggerating and lying. In a response to the tweets, she explained she was pulled into a room where she was questioned by 5 different rounds of security guards who also patted her down and scanned her with x-rays and more. She went through the entire ordeal by herself. She said, "Tell me when you're discriminated against, or shut the fuck up." Okay, so she's patted down by 5 individual people. That's pretty much it. So Lila Gibney actually released a video just a few days ago now, actually explaining a little bit more as to what happened. So what she says in the video is that she was running late to the airport. It looks like that her flight was at 4:30 in the morning and she arrives at 4 o'clock. So she hasn't really left a lot of time to get the plane. She's in the queue to be patted down and, searched by airport security. They seem to notice something. They take her into a separate room and they go over her a couple of times. In the video, she says that, or at least indicates that she mentioned to them that she felt that she was being discriminated against, and then says that one of the airport security people said that wasn't the case. Regardless, she did get very upset about it and then posted the tweet, and the rest is, as I said before. So I wanted to talk about this because this seems to be a quite popular narrative that trans people get in a lot of trouble in the airports. A couple of months ago, I had Blair White on this channel and she talked about going to the airport. As a lot of you probably know, she's pre-op, and she mentioned that this is something which does seem to happen, but it's something that you generally have to deal with. Basically, they're not expecting to see anything down there. If your documents show that you're a woman, they're not really going to be expecting a penis down there. And Lila does look really good. So you're probably not going to presume that she's a trans woman. And if you come across something a bit extra down there, then that's going to raise some concerns, because what is that? It is something which is certainly annoying, and yeah, you can argue that might be treating people differently, but they are expecting one thing and they're seeing another. If you're flying a lot, this should be expected. Now, I'll be honest, I am post-op, so it's unlikely that this would ever happen to me. I didn't fly all too much before surgery. In fact, I think the first time I actually flown since I came out as trans was after my surgery anyway. So I never ran across this in any European airport, so to speak. So whilst I've no doubt that this was a frustrating and upsetting experience for her, I don't think this narrative is correct, that this was targeted for being trans, and to simply say that you were being detained just for being trans. It wasn't being detained, you were just being searched. They didn't arrest you, they didn't stop you from getting on the flight, because she got on the flight eventually. And again, this seems to be quite a popular narrative. I remember a couple of years ago, Gigi Gorgeous actually got stopped at an airport in Dubai and she wasn't allowed through. She said at the time that, well, it's because they told her that she was transgender and they don't allow transgender people in the UAE. The airport, however, said that her passport didn't match what they saw in front of her, and that was the reason why she wasn't allowed in the country. Now, I remember when this story came out, and I was actually flying to the UAE like a month after the story broke. And so I was in a panic because I thought, well, if Gigi gets caught out here and she looks so much better than me, what chance do I have? I've spent all of this money going to Abu Dhabi and I'm going to get, well, not allowed in the country. What the hell am I going to do? But I was perfectly fine in the UAE. And that was pre-facial feminization surgery. Trust me, look at some of my older videos. I looked pretty bad. And I was perfectly fine. I think there's a lot of scare stories out there when it comes to the likes of airports. What I would say, really, is if you are pre-op, as unfortunate as this is, you might have to expect there to be a few more pat-downs. However, that just seems to be a sacrifice. You might just have to accept that. It's as difficult as it is. I don't think this is discrimination. I don't think this is something you can sue the airport for. I just think this is an extra step, which you're just going to have to accept. I'm sorry if people are offended by that. That is just my general thoughts. So what are your thoughts on the video this week? Is there anything in particular I missed out? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, you can support me on Patreon and Subscribestar. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment, because all of that really, really helps me out. Thanks all again, and I will see you all next time. And a special thanks to Alex Meadows, Casey Adolphson, Dan Norman, Finella Cooney, James C. George, Kim Vandry, Latin Creature, Lizu Desu, Nova B, Ricardo Jose, Rose Hypnol, Stephen, The Poor of Rizzo, Traname Girl, Green Potato Chips, Glacier, James Dorans, James UK, Moy Felicita, Kim Vandry, Sarah, Janine Karen, Stefan Hansen, and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.
Give it up's gonna be alright.